Chip Kelly has only been at Ohio State for a couple weeks and is wasting no time recruiting quarterbacks that'll make Ohio State better in the future.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, sir, Buckeye fans. It's a feel-good Friday. The NBA is back after a long NBA All-Star break, and spring training is here. A couple things to fill the void with there being no Buckeye football. Welcome in, Buckeye fans, to a Friday edition of Locked On Buckeyes here on Friday, February 23rd in the year 2024. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast, and today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers, join today, and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. During today's episode, Brian Smith, who is Locked On's recruiting analyst, will be with us once again to discuss a 2026 quarterback in Brady Smigel, who the Buckeyes just extended an offer to. Also touched on four-star wide receiver Nashawn Montgomery and four-star offensive lineman Mason Short. Got a lot of good stuff today. Brian's here, and he, brought all the good Buckeye news and info that we want to hear. Trust me, don't go anywhere. You're going to love this show. And as we welcome in Brian Smith, I'd like to thank LinkedIn Jobs for being the official college football recruiting sponsor across the Locked On College Network. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. Terms and conditions apply. Normally, when we have Brian on the show, we're talking about guys that are in the 2025 cycle that are graduating in about a year and a half from now. At the beginning of today's show, we're not doing that because the Buckeyes, and I did read an article that this offer came from Chip Kelly, offered a five-star quarterback in the class of 2026, Brady Smigel. Chip Kelly had a relationship with this young man when Chip Kelly was at UCLA, so it definitely made sense why Chip Kelly offered him now when he's at Ohio State. And when I watch Brady Smigel play, Brian, this man can make all the throws look very easy.
Yeah, he's one of those rare kids that kind of figured it out at a very early age. He has some size to him. It's kind of natural, but he's playing against good competition, and his receivers are getting passes thrown to them, and most guys wouldn't even try, and just drop it in the bucket. He also does a really good job on some of those throws. When he let it go, I'm like, what? But he's got enough arm strength to get it in the window. Now, that gets a little more risky as you go up levels, but he is not a guy that's afraid to put it in the middle of the field. Most high school quarterbacks avoid the middle of the field like the plague. So he makes plays all over the field, and he's mobile enough to extend the play. He's not going to be a guy that's Michael Vick, but he'll run for a few yards here or there. If you give him a running lane, he'll pick up 10 yards. He is the annoying guy, kind of like a certain quarterback in Kansas City in terms of style. Yeah. Every now and then when he runs, he can throw, but if he gets 2 or 3 extra first downs with his legs, Mahomes kills you. Smigel's similar to that. And I tell you what, his film is just fun to watch. I've seen it a few times, and I watched it again today just for fun. And it's like, this kid's really just a sophomore. But then again, like you and I were talking before the show, Ohio State, Georgia, everybody's offered him, and he's got 2 years of high school left. What does that tell you?
That's exactly what it is. We talk about it all the time. You got 2 years left. I think I saw nearly 30 offers already.
Right.
I'm like, this kid is just only going to get better. And you mentioned the mobility that he has in the pocket and moving around and extending plays, and then even having strategic runs like Patrick Mahomes. He's 6'5". And when I'm out there looking at him, I'm saying he looks like your prototypical size-wise quarterback in high school, but then he moves around like he's a veteran, like he's a senior. I'm like, this is not normal. But that mobility is one thing that I think Ryan Day and Chip Kelly want from their quarterback, not so much to run like a Michael Vick, like you mentioned, but also figure out how to extend plays when you need to, but also be able to get yards past the line of scrimmage also when you need to.
Yeah, if he has to run, he does. Let's be clear. He's a mobile quarterback that is always trying to penetrate the defense with his arm. But if he gets the opportunity, he's not afraid to run. It's the great happy medium. Most NFL quarterbacks, like Aaron Rodgers, is in that style. Aaron can run. He's a pretty fast guy, but he's not stupid. He's not going to be taking on linebackers and surviving very long. There's been some guys make some really bad decisions with that, and their careers were cut short. Smigel kind of fits that profile, and he's done it over and over again. I think that he's the rare guy that has some maturity to him about when he does stuff like that too. I'm curious to see what his film's like after this next season, because except for just getting more athletic or adding more mass, there's really not a lot more that he can do in high school. And he's playing in suburban LA. He's playing against good competition. So, yeah, I'd imagine we'll be talking about this young man for quite a while.
I think so too. One thing that I like to do is whenever I look up a player, I want to look at their numbers. If I could find their stats from my previous season, I want to try and do that. 4,200 passing yards, 58% completion percentage, 52 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. So one thing that I'm seeing is, hey, he can move the ball, 4,000 plus passing yards, 50 plus touchdowns. But the 14 INTs, I want to get down, and I also want to increase that completion percentage. You're getting these offers now, but I'm thinking Chip Kelly and Ryan Day, they might be pleased with the passing yards and the passing touchdowns, but they would love to see over the next season, especially during that junior season, less interceptions, higher completion percentage.
That goes back to his risk-taking mentality. Yes. And just kind of watching his team in general. They have players, but it's not like they're St. John Bosco or Mater Dei either. I think he's under the impression that I have to take some risks. There's a lot of ways you can look at that. I know that there are certain quarterbacks in the NFL that get discussed often as check down Charlies, etc. And you can agree or disagree with it. Just because you have low interceptions doesn't mean you're going to do anything.
Yeah.
Let me put it to you like this. In my opinion, in the last 20 years of college football, the most important game happened at the end of the 2016 season. Bama was the most dominant team. Everybody hated playing them, blah, blah, blah. Deshaun Watson, who threw like 12 picks that year, took some chances against Alabama in that game, and he connected on them. They weren't anywhere near as good as Alabama. He found ways to hit plays, take chances, some of it with mobility, extending plays. Threw a couple that were like, but he just happened to beat, that was his day, and they won. Were they going to beat Alabama unless he had an exceptional game? No.
Right.
Unless you're the team, like Georgia can get away with that most of the time. Why? They got more talent than everybody else. It's just true.
It is.
But if you're not Georgia, your quarterback, to beat them, either they're going to have to screw up and give you a touchdown. Like Alabama beat them last year. They got a free touchdown on a bust. Just 7 points. Alabama barely wins. Well, you need something like that. The other way to do it is your quarterback hits a play that you're like, that's pretty good coverage, but he drops it in the bucket. Those take some guts. I want to see what he does and still going with that and still reducing. There's some fine lines, and that's why quarterback is hard. When you're throwing in the middle of the field in particular, a lot of them that I saw, man, they were close, even on his highlight film. I'm sure that if we watched all the game film, some of those went the other way.
Mm-hmm.
That's the next step. So, and I know just from being around college coaches forever and high school coaches, everybody thinks they're the one that's going to fix the guy. It's just, don't get me started on that. And I'm sure Ryan Day is similar to that, and Chip, different philosophies in some ways, but they are from the same tree and coach together. They probably think they have a way they can make him really good too. So this is why football is fascinating. It is a lifelong learning sport because it's a team game. Even though you're a quarterback and a lot goes through you, you got to be able to assess, okay, we're up 2 touchdowns here. There's no reason. That's when I get really ticked. When did the interceptions happen? Were they against the team that you're going to smoke if you don't turn the ball over? That's a bad sign. If it's against a team like, okay, we should lose by 20 tonight. If you throw a couple more up for grabs down the field, I'm cool with it. You got to take more chances.
We're going from the West Coast with Smigel to the East Coast in South Florida with another talented wide receiver that is high on the Buckeyes. We'll tap into Nashawn Montgomery next on Locked On Buckeyes. This episode is brought to you by Ibotta. Do you love making money, but also love spending money? Don't we all? Now you can make money while you spend it every time you shop with Ibotta. Ibotta is a free app that gives you the most cash back every time you shop on hundreds of items, from groceries to beauty supplies to toys, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. the average Ibotta user earns $256 per year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip, so you can buy that flight you've been eyeing, that game you're dying to go to, or the fancy dinner you've been craving. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. When you register, just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app to start earning cash back and use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. This episode is also brought to you by our friends at Billiards Plus. Billiards Plus has the best selection of pool tables, game tables, shuffleboard tables, and more, and the best service in Central Ohio. And guys, check this out. Billiards Plus carries grills that have up to 30-year warranties. That's right, a grill with a 30-year warranty. Everything you need for in-home and backyard entertainment is at Billiards Plus. Billiards Plus carries the best pool tables from Brunswick, Austin, Canada, Billiards, and more. They are family owned and operated, and when you talk to the staff at Billiards Plus, you know you're talking to an expert who won't steer you wrong. No matter the season, Billiards Plus has you covered for all your indoor and outdoor entertainment needs. Kenny, Sarah, and the whole staff will always go above and beyond to give you the best customer service in the industry. Billiards Plus, visit their showroom on Dublin Center Drive in Dublin. I say it all the time, and I was trying to get away from making this statement, Brian, but it's true. You're on the show. We got to talk about a kid in Florida. It's just something that has to happen. Nashawn Montgomery down there in Miami Central in Miami, Florida. He's a little guy, 6 foot. I saw listed on 247, 160 pounds. He's high on the Buckeyes, and I think he's one of those guys that is just the same every single rep. And I say that off of the film that I got to watch before coming on the show, Brian. Every single rep, every step, his hands going up for the catch, they all sound like it's the same motion of movement over and over and over, and he's pretty good when he's out on the football field.
Yeah, Montgomery's a guy that's very fluid. I saw him multiple times last year. I've seen him 7-on-7, etc. He's a kid that's now like moved up his size. Like he lists himself at 6'3". I don't know how accurate that is, but he's
6'3".
over. Yeah, I don't know if he's that tall yet, but he's over 6 foot.
Okay.
And he just moved. He was at a school up in Palm Beach. He just transferred to Miami Central. That's the dog pit right there. I mean, you got to be ready to go out and play because their schedule is insane. But he's been a guy that's been an Under Armour Future 50. He's a guy that's got offers from everybody, Miami, LSU, Ohio State, etc. And he's just a kind of a slinky. He's a kid that makes kind of awkward catches look normal, and he's in his element. He's a kid that moved down from the East Coast, ironically, and lived in Florida since. But, yeah, this is the kind of guy that obviously Ohio State does well with receivers in the state of Florida that they can look at from a developmental standpoint, the frame, and be like, okay, yeah, we can do something with this.
You know, Brian, his frame seems small. Like I'm out there watching him, and I got to see video from a camp that he was at. Now, granted, there's no pads on, had the headgear protector on, so you're not getting the whole regular Saturday or Friday night football feel by just looking at him out there on the field. But he looks small. Now, granted, he is a youngster, is a junior, so he's going to have some more time to build and add on to that frame. But that may be my first thing that I'm looking at. I'm saying, hey, you're good, but you're going to have to pack on some weight to be able to play at the next level.
Yeah, he's probably going to have to gain 20 pounds over his career, but like a handful of the guys that have come to Ohio State in the last even 5 years were 160, 170, whether they were a slot or whatever, and they end up being pretty good. Now, every now and then they get you can't count Smith. Jeremiah is different. He's 210. You got to put him to the side. He screws up all the algorithms. But everybody else, pretty much under 200 pounds, you're going to sign. And these kids can all run. Jeremiah is just all the above. But this is a young man, if he went to most schools in most years, would be their number 1 or number 2 wide receiver recruit. Now, Ohio State, he might be number 3. I don't know. But he's a top 100 kid by most people's account, talent-wise. The weight just needs to come on and hopefully naturally. Just let it kind of happen over time.
Yeah, hopefully naturally. Where do you think his game can improve?
Probably the biggest thing is related to what I was just talking about with size. He's going to have to learn to get off bump coverage. And one of the reasons you can is you're just stronger than the other guy. Mm-hmm. Instead of throwing hands twice to get a move, You got to be able to make one move and get their hands down with power and then go. It's just saving time. He's not physically ready to, when he goes up against a 6'1", 190 kid, those elite corners, those bigger guys are guys that could be kind of a fundamentally safety rover corner. I'm not saying everybody's DJ Pickett, who's a 6'4" corner, but guys like that, he's going to have a little more problem with. Smaller DBs are going to struggle with him because he's just as shifty as they are, and he's really long. I think that he'll be fine there. Over the top, in the middle of the field, all that stuff, he's fine. He can take screens, make it look like he's a 5'9" kid, and make plays. All that's good. He just needs that more power at the line of scrimmage.
You talk about him acting and looking like a 5'9" kid. When I see him out there in his shiftiness, in and out of breaks, he appears like he is not 6 foot or taller. He appears like he's more 5'8", 5'9", 5'10" with this shiftiness. You mentioned just the physicality and the bump and run, that stuff. I think that stuff will come later, and I really hope it does, just for him as a football player. But his shiftiness and his ability to beat you at the line of scrimmage without using his hands, just his legs and his hips and his head and his shoulders to beat you that way, it's fun to watch.
Those are the kind of kids that end up on SportsCenter, having that one play where they turn a guy around. It happens every now and then. Nachon's certainly competitive enough to do it. And trust me, he wouldn't be transferring to Central, which is as good a public program as there is in the country, unless he had that kind of ability, because they got dudes all over the place. So I think he will be their key player at receiver this next year. Well, Wayne McCoy was the guy last year for them, and he signed with Florida State at offers from everybody. That's kind of their go-to guy probably this year. And Central is a top 20 program nationally. So I'm curious to see what he does. This is a totally different level. You're playing against Northwestern, American Heritage, all these elite programs. They played IMG a few years ago. He'll be put on display rather quickly.
Do you think he's better suited for the slot or an outside receiver?
Long term, he could probably play both, but I think slot right now is kind of a longer athletic version of a slot that would be a pain for many schools to deal with, because most slot corners are either one of two things. They're smaller, really twitchy, or B, because you're worried about the tight end being a blocker and being in that screen game, you'll go with the bigger guy. He's real quicker than that. So he's the in-between hybrid. That's interesting. Now, once he gets a little bit stronger, I'm sure they're going to put whoever he signs with will play him on the outside. Ohio State, Miami, and LSU are three of the top schools with him. Those schools do not struggle at receiver. They don't typically recruit guys that can just play one spot. Like Jeremiah can play slot if you want it. Like, he's a unique guy. Deshaun's not that level, but he's still really good. Eventually, he'll be able to play in multiple places. So 3rd down and 7, where's he going to be at? When you start having chess pieces like that and making the other coaching staff wonder, it's really hard as a defense, and that's where you get guys wide open.
When I think about Montgomery and the competition in the upcoming season, it kind of goes back to Smigel. We know Smigel, the quarterback, we're looking at some areas that, hey, there are some areas that we want to see you get through and improve on in the upcoming season. Same thing for Montgomery, but he's also going to have these camps and going to have these visits in the summer. So not even going to look to next season. We know there's going to be areas that we want to see him get better. But over the next few months, do you anticipate him taking a visit to Ohio State in the month of June?
Well, if he gets up there this spring, will dictate. I always like to say, I don't care what the kids say, especially South Florida kids.
Yeah.
They say lots of things. But it's what they do that I'm concerned with. Like, Miami's after him, and he's right down the road. How often does he get to Miami? If he only visits Miami like once this spring and you're 20 minutes away, we'll see. Ohio State's different. It's harder to get there. If he takes at least one visit, okay, then, and he's talking about doing that. Well, now you got to look at it like there's a better chance for him to take an OB. It starts, I believe, mid-May now. It's like the 16th or 17th.
Oh, okay. I thought it was still June.
They changed. Look, don't get me started on this. All the way to the end of the month of June. So I think it'll be pretty interesting to see his list, because LSU's after him. I mean, his list is broad. He's pretty much got wherever he wants to go, but the unofficial visits right now are probably going to dictate where he goes this summer.
Let's go right there, because I wasn't planning on doing this, but I'm thinking the Buckeyes start spring practice here soon. The second portal window opens up, I think, towards the end of the spring practice season. And you're saying players can take visits in the middle of May? That makes things really hard for coaches.
Right. It's 16th to the 30th is the portal window. There's no good way to do it. So I know I have other people think, well, we should just do this. there's always an action and a reaction. And they're trying to do it with the schedule, with the portal towards the end of semesters. So kids will get, okay, I'm done at school X, I enroll at school Y. It does make sense from that.
It does.
Unfortunately, it's the same thing with the high school kids. The end of the first semester, they want to be able to enroll early so they can go ahead and get into college. Well, that's exactly the same time. The month of December is my most profitable month, but I hate it. There's no way to cover everything at the same time. It's not possible. So yeah, I think Ohio State will get a little bit of that action, but like Colorado, I wouldn't. You couldn't pay me to cover Colorado with their transfer portal stuff. I have no interest. Nothing against Dion personally, but like he's not going to get the high school kids he wants by and large, so he goes portal. I get it. This is a little bit different for them. The thing for Buckeye fans, remember, they need like 5 to 10 transfers a year, but they're trying to get specific fits. Or if, a kid really got hurt, just a plug. They're not using the portal to build their roster like Dion is. There's certain schools, anybody in like that top 12, 14 schools in the country, even Iowa to a certain degree, they just need to be able to throw the ball. They've got plenty of players in the trenches and all that. You're looking for that one extra guy. So you get Montgomery or somebody like that to come in. I still think they're going to go high school route with receivers. They need a defensive tackle or something, and there's none of them. Everybody's looking for defensive tackles. There's none that you had. So Ohio State might be a little quieter in the spring portal than you think.
After the break, I'm going to talk to Brian about that very topic he had about Ohio State going for the high school receiver, not the receiver in the transfer portal. That's coming at you next on Locked On Buckeyes. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. Brian, the plan was to move on to the very next athlete, which you sparked a thought in my head. Why do you think the Buckeyes are more in line to go after a high school receiver than a receiver who's already in college who happens to be in the transfer portal?
I'm guessing it's a combination of all the above here. Number one, they're getting the guys they want out of high school. They probably I'm not saying it's unbelievably complex, but like some of the receivers play early. What was the kid from a couple of years ago from California? Played right away. He's with the Saints or whatever.
Chris Olave.
Yeah, like he came in and played. If you could pick up the system, that's always the part of recruiting that's impossible. We have no idea.
Right.
Because every school's offense, do you pick up the terminology? Kids sometimes have to wait just on that. It drives fans nuts, but look, if you're going the wrong direction, it's no good. So there's that part of it to look at, and they want him to kind of go through it. Like Ennis learned a lot last year. I know Brandon since he was a freshman in high school. He's going to play in the NFL one day. It's just going to take him a while because they got guys in front of him. They wanted him to learn behind him. That's probably the best way to do it. The problem is everybody else trying to copy it can't get the same kids Ohio State does by and large. There are a few exceptions to that, but not many. Now, here's the other part. I just think that a lot of coaches won't necessarily admit this. Even if they could get a coach, Ohio State's getting phone calls. If I get in the portal, would you guys be interested? I guarantee it. They're worried about pissing somebody off. It's already in the locker room.
Mm-hmm.
Beginning and end of conversation. That's it. So they're like, why screw up a good thing? I would bet my bottom dollar on that. And you go play over here. We'll give you advice, but we're going to stick with our guys. Do you think Jeremiah Smith wants to sit behind some transfer? Even if that guy's really good, they're just rolling along here. There's no reason to really switch it. Now, there's exceptions to that at other spots. Ohio State, you could argue, recruits receiver better than any other school recruits another position. They're at least in that conversation. Now, if we change that to defensive tackle, they got to do it. Even if it ticks off somebody, because they need immediate help. That's where the portal gets really awkward because sometimes flat out, this will not go well long term, but I have to win now. Ryan Day has to win now. So right now I'm being very clear.
Yeah.
I don't know of any defensive tackle for any school that's going to be in the portal. Those guys either are great and staying where they're at or they turn pro. Same thing at corner. There's very few of them. So that's why you don't see many transfers that really amount to much at those spots by and large. And if you get one, there's a special circumstance, kind of like a safety that just left Alabama
Yeah.
to come to Ohio State. But he'd be there if it wasn't for Saban. No.
Right.
Take advantage.
You have to. The Buckeyes also have to take advantage of the opportunity that they're in with a really talented four-star offensive lineman from Georgia down there in the southern part of the country. Mason Short recently announced, his top final four in his recruitment: Kentucky, Clemson, Ohio State, and Georgia. There's two thoughts here that I have about this, Brian. One, it's a big advantage for Ohio State to be in the mix of this group. But two, if you get a commitment from this man, he immediately fills part of a need in your upcoming recruiting class that is getting quality offensive linemen to join that group.
He's a kid that is, I was trying to think, might have even been at one of the under our campuses, a freshman. Can't remember, but definitely a sophomore. Mason was highly recruited, committed to Bama. Another kid that decommitted when Nick decided he was going to retire. Georgia's trending, but he's got visits to other places. He's he grew up in Georgia, knows that program. Watch out for Clemson and Ohio State because of visits.
Correct.
Clemson in particular is famous for this. They're always kind of slow play, go into it, and the kid takes a visit and blows them away. Ohio State has had some trends like that in the past too, especially when Urban was there. They're the one school in the group that's not like the others because it's up north. We have no idea how that's going to go when he takes an official. He probably will take one, and he is a mauler. Interior guy that's a power player that would have been perfect in Myers' downhill read option type offense, but he can play in whatever too. I'm curious to see what he does beyond those four, if anybody else gets back in it, if Alabama does, etc. Oh, these are my final four. I don't believe any kid when they say that, and it's February. I have no interest in that, but we know these are four of the teams that he's really hard looking at. So great player, and it's a guy that can pretty much pick his school.
One of my favorite things when I watch him play is that when he gets to you, you feel him immediately. I've seen this kid downfield get a block. It was a screenplay. He went downfield, hit the guy. Homeboy got off his feet. The defender did. I was like, oh my gosh, like this guy's going to make sure you feel him. And he is just, I'm sure, big, meaty hands. And he's quicker than I expected downfield blocking than I would be for a guy listed 6'5", 6'6", 305. I'm like, my gosh. But you're saying interior. Somebody else said interior. I would have assumed, especially at Ohio State, if you come in 6'5", 6'6", 3+, we're going to put Pack on 15, 20, make you a tackle. But do you think he's better suited on the interior of the offensive line?
Just his mentality. He could play tackle. I'm trying to think of the best comparison that I can use, and I'm not saying he's on this level. Quentin Nelson could play tackle for the Colts.
Yes.
But he's unbelievable as a guard.
Correct.
He's a Hall of Famer. Just let it be. You know what I mean? Like he could have played tackle at Notre Dame. Just let it be. Like he pushed out a guy that was a starter that ended up transferring because he redshirted, and they told him, like, look, he's going to be a starter next year. Before even spring ball got there. They told the guy. This is the kind of kid that I think will redshirt somewhere or play just a little bit as a freshman, as a sophomore. He's going to beat somebody out that's older because he can just move men against their will. I'd play him at left or right guard, whatever. And if he could snap, that's great. I don't know if Mason can, but he moves people against their will. That never goes out of style. So at the end of the day, in those elite games, Ohio State, Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, Georgia, Alabama, etc., the team that can kind of move the ball in short yardage when everybody knows they want to run the ball typically wins.
Brian, last thing here, just about Mason Short. When you look at this group of four, and just these four schools specifically, you always say, and I do believe it, it's not about what you say, it's about what you do and the actions that are there. So I'm looking to see where he takes a visit to unofficially, what official visits he takes and things like that. But there's two schools here that kind of make me nervous. Georgia's automatically one, not just being the in-state school, but also it's just Georgia. It's Kirby Smart. I think it just makes sense if you're in that state to try to go to that school. But Dabo Swinney, somehow, some way, always finds a way to get quality offensive linemen. Now, sometimes there's a lack of development once they get on campus, occasionally, but he's always finding a way to get the commitment from the kid. So we're not talking about things that Ryan Day and Ohio State might do developing the kid on campus. You got to find a way to get a commitment from him first. And Clemson and Georgia both scare me, But Dabo being in this mix versus Ryan Day, it wouldn't shock me if Short went to Clemson over Ohio State because Dabo seems to win a lot of these battles.
That's a cultural thing. You've got to live down here to understand it. The religion, the type of lifestyle, the smaller town, all of that. A lot of the parents and stuff strongly push their kids to those environments. That's why Auburn, Clemson, Ole Miss, etc., get certain kids. And to be honest, a lot of the time, there's nothing about the other schools can do about it. Even a school like Alabama, Tuscaloosa is by no means a metropolis. Let me be clear, but it's not massive. Clemson's tiny. The town is surrounded. The school is everything. Like I live in Auburn now, and it's kind of similar. Clemson's even smaller. What are you looking for in terms of your environment? Ohio State is 100% a polar opposite 180 turn. Columbus is now allegedly the biggest city in Ohio, and the school is the biggest school in the country. He either will like that or he will hate it. It'll be A or B when he visits. That'll take care of itself, and it won't have diddly to do with Ryan Day.
Love having Brian on the show. He's going to be here not just this week, not just last week, but throughout the offseason, providing insight like this about the Buckeye recruits that they're going after to try to get a commitment from. You can follow Brian on X at FBScout_Florida. Follow me on the same platform at JStevens07. We are out of here on a Friday, Buckeye fans. We will see you next time.